The Masters is here, the golf season in full swing. I'm Matt Gajtka with Zac Weiss. This is the PGN Par 4, and the Masters is right here on our doorstep. Not a lot of time to build up the hype, Zach, but I think the golf world is taking care of that for us. But let us be the last Masters preview that you watch or listen to this year. And I guess the rush feel kind of seems appropriate, right? Because this is the shortest span ever between Masters, and it's not even close because of the Fall Masters last year. That was more of a one-off. This feels like the return to tradition, the return to what it's supposed to be like this time of year. The arrival of spring and the golf world, the sporting world, really turns its eyes upon an 18-hole track down there in Augusta, Georgia. So I know I'm looking forward to it. I know you are, and looking forward to chatting with you once again here on the Par 4.
I feel like we're still missing the par three contest. I feel like that's the end all be all. I always love seeing Gary Player and Jack Nicklaus out there for a time. Obviously, Arnold Palmer out there, and just getting a chance to see the golfers and their families, their spouses take putts on number 9. The kids hit putts that maybe the first putts that they've ever hit in their entire lives. Creating memories as a family. It's always a nice way to eschew in the Masters. Unfortunately, with COVID the last couple years, it's not been possible, so it's been watching a lot of GT Nicklaus hitting a hole-in-one on number 9 and so on and so forth. But I'll say the build-up was a little bit dull, and then Sunday kind of happened, and between Brooks Koepka teasing that he was going to be on the grounds and Jordan Spieth, whatever time it was, being the charm at this point, kind of wrote itself, and now it seems like it's exciting. Jon Rahm, there was a little bit of uncertainty. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Fortunately, he is now a father, and he was fortunate that everybody's safe, everybody's healthy. He's on the grounds, and he's ready for what he hopes to be a good week as well. So, interesting build-up. Obviously, one name that we all know that's the big name that's not going to be there in Tiger Woods. Obviously, also unable to make the Champions Dinner last night. Since this is live, we can date ourselves a little bit more. But that is the case, and it's going to be interesting to see just who's the cream that rises to the crop this week, because it is going to be a different golf course than what it was just a few months ago.
Absolutely. And if you're new to the PGN Par 4, Zach and I tee off, get it, on 4 topics pertinent to the golf world. It's going to be mostly Masters. We'll save a little wild card there for the end. But Zach, I want to start with what the Masters means to you. And I'll admit it, as a kid, I didn't quite get the Masters hype and all the build-up, just because I felt like as a golf fan, I was more drawn to the U.S. Open if I had to pick a major. And I still find the U.S. Open to be the most compelling event out there, just because of typically how difficult the test is and the fact that it is open. It is everything that I love about golf, the fact that it's egalitarian, that anybody can play it, and that it's all about whatever number you put up. You could be 5'0" or you could be 7 feet tall. And players of both statures have found ways to be really good at this game over the years. So that part of it makes me more of a U.S. Open guy. I love the Open Championship across the pond, too. I've developed an appreciation for that. So Masters is probably tied for second for me as far as majors are concerned. But I do say that I've gained an appreciation for it over the years. And I think as you get older, you like it more. That seems to be the case, at least anecdotally for me, from observing other golf fans. As the older you are, the more you get really jacked up about the Masters. And I think it's just because it's the simplest thing, right? It's on the same course every year. And so you get to know it, and you can juxtapose what, for instance, last year Dustin Johnson did on 13 or on 15 with what Tiger Woods has done in the past, or going back to Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer or Gary Player. I mean, if you're old enough, even guys like Ben Hogan and Bobby Jones, too. So you just see that repetition. I know the course changes. It lengthens especially. That's the biggest change over the years. But as I get older, I'm starting to appreciate the nostalgia factor, and also just the idea that you can build the drama year over year. So that's what it means to me, is the history of golf really brought forward to the present, honestly, with how this tournament plays out over the years. I know there's some certainly troublesome history too, and I love what Fred Ridley has done, the new chairman of Augusta National. He's brought in the women's amateur. He has brought in Lee Elder to hit the ceremonial first tee shot with Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player here. But this is about the best I felt about Augusta National in my life from a societal standpoint, but from a golf standpoint, it just builds on it for me. So what does the Masters mean to you?
Well, I'm going to eschew from the political aspect of it, which obviously the last week plus has unfolded a lot of skeletons, and it seems like Fred Ridley is trying not to step on any toes in either direction, trying to please everybody, which the middle makes it hard to please anybody, but it's a very tough spot with what's going on there. But for me, the first Masters I remember growing up, and forgive me, everybody, this dates me, 2004, Phil Mickelson getting the proverbial monkey off of his back. For one, there were very limited commercials, and it seems like the Masters does a good job where I guess they're not as, whether it's CBS or the Masters themselves, just limited commercials providing the opportunity for you to see more golf. It's not just that, hey, here's 75% of the screen as a commercial, but if you really want to watch the golfers, either you have to pay a subscription fee or you have to watch the 25% screen, which is very difficult for some people to watch a screen of that size and that magnitude. So when you're watching Phil Mickelson and Ernie Els kind of dueling down there towards the end, even though Els was a couple of groups ahead, there were so many stories. Ernie, just South African with a very smooth golf swing. And you had Phil, who was looking to finally snap that streak of majors, that so-called best player never to win a major. And you see it at Augusta. And then you see also the chess match on 18 when Chris DeMarco hits it out of the bunker and hits it just behind Phil Mickelson. And Phil Mickelson was the most interested observer on the 72nd green on that day because it was a perfect line. And to this day, I'm sure to a man, Phil would tell you, if DeMarco doesn't stroke that putt, then Phil Mickelson is either in a playoff best case scenario. So at that point, really, Phil Mickelson, it was just such a Cinderella story. And of course, as he joked years later, he got to show off his Olympic jumping ability with the birdie make on the 72nd hole as well. And he's won a few majors to add to that one since then, which has been great as he's won 3 or 4 majors as well. But for me, the Masters is all about the tradition. And when I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's the same course every single year. All these other majors have a rotation of some kind where you are familiar with some of the courses where there might be the occasional wild card, like what the USGA did with Aaron Hills, for example, where it kind of was just a wild card just to maybe make something with a different eye and hope that the players wouldn't be too harsh. Of course, the players were a little bit on the harsher side that year, but you do have your tried and trues, like the USGA loves going to Oakmont or Pebble Beach, or it seems like the PGA of America likes hitting a New York course and somewhere along those lines and getting a Shinnecock or something in that kind of a rotation. You know to expect that. The Open Championship has long had its tried and true successful locations, although 1 or 2 may be removed for membership related issues. It seems like that might be eschewing in that sense as golf across the pond sort of gets into the 21st century. But the Masters has done a respectable job. The drive, chip, and putt has also been nice. You get a lot of past champions on the ground, and for a lot of these younger kids, those are their respective heroes as well. So there's a really good opportunity for those young kids not just to make memories of themselves on the course, but also make memories where they'll get to see that player that they've been seeing on television or that their mother, father, or related sibling really draws to, and then they can see, hey, this is the magnitude of this person, and I can pose with them when they lift the trophy pre-COVID. So really, the Masters has really hit the nail on the head. The concession stands and the legendary pricing for the patrons that are in attendance, just there's always the game. Look what your $20 can get you. You could get 4 beers, you could get a 5-course meal. I mean, there's so much between the legendary pimento cheese sandwich, between, of course, the legendary now peach cobbler ice cream and everything down the line, the one-of-a-kind, the merchandise shop, there's the renovation of the press building, the opportunity for media to play the course in final round conditions the day after the infamous lottery, which some have been fortunate, some are still waiting for their opportunity. But there is a little bit of something for everyone, although, of course, there are some people that do frown upon some of the serious nature that the Masters has, where there's no running, there's no phones, it's a lot of landline telephones. So there's that. There's no real, you don't really see any bugs flying around the course. For some reason, everything's clean. There's no leaves on the ground. It's just the mystique of Augusta National. And that's what makes it great. And that's what is part of the tradition. And that's really, you see so many different kind of winners where it seems like a lot of these other majors may be tailored to different kind of golf games where, depending on how Augusta National plays, like this year, it looks like the greens are going to be very firm, so it's going to be bringing a lot more. So maybe it's more of a second shot course this year. And that brings into play when you pick somebody, which we will later, you have to pick different names maybe, or think about different names than you maybe otherwise would have considered. At least that's the case for myself. So really with it, just the tradition, they say as hokey as it is, it's a tradition unlike any other. But as far as golf is concerned, I mean, of course you have your St. Andrews, but us across the pond in America aren't necessarily as familiar with the mystique of St. Andrews. But seeing Augusta National, with that's what a lot of American golf fans were born and raised on, you look forward to it every year. And now with the implementation of the women's amateur, which just successfully completed its second event over this past weekend with a very wonderful winner. I mean, it goes across, and it seems like they're starting to welcome more women and minorities into the game, which is very, very important as well. And hopefully they continue to be aware of the times and they make good decisions there and continue to make the tradition, because they're making a lot of good transitions and a lot of good decisions. And hopefully they're doing their part to grow the game, because it seems like they're off to a good setting on that.
The Masters has a lot to make up for, honestly, and I'll just put it out there like that. And tradition has two sides, especially in the deep south of America.
Sure.
So a part of that has kept me at arm's length from the Masters over the years, but I'm also not so much of a killjoy that I can't understand the huge outpouring of enthusiasm that comes to the game of golf because of the Masters. So you take your good, you take your bad, and we'll move on forward into shot number 2 here. And shot 2 is the guy that I think most people are keeping their eyes trained on as Thursday's first round will begin with maybe not this player necessarily the favorite, but one of the favorites. And I'm talking about, of course, 2015 Masters champion Jordan Spieth. He comes off a win in his native state of Texas at the Valero Texas Open. Zach, this was a gradual build for Jordan Spieth because he's been getting closer and closer, and his game has been getting more and more like the one that we saw when he was on that run from about 2014 through 2017. Picked up 3 majors along the way, the U.S. Open in 2015 and the Open Championship in 2017, that duel with Matt Kuchar. So, yeah, he's got those major championships, but it had been a while since he won any tournament, in fact. Nearly a 4-year drought that he ended last week. And Zach, through it all, he had some putting struggles, and of course, putting was what made him the virtuoso coming out on tour at first. Especially the short ones seemed to bother him, and the driver also was getting in his way. He remained skilled throughout all of his struggles here at getting the ball from somewhere on the golf course onto the green, but it was both the start and the finish that were vexing him. And now it seems like he's gotten both figured out, at least to the level where he's been in the top 10, he's been in the top 5, he's had a lead going into the final round, and he finally closes it out just this past week. So, of course, because of his history at Augusta, he's played well there 3 times. I think he has 3 top 5s. And honestly, he should have more than one Masters because of that blow up he had in 2016, too. So I'm not sure I'm picking him to win. In fact, we'll talk about that in our next segment. But I will say that this has been a huge boost of adrenaline for all of us who like golf because, like him or hate him, I don't think anybody really hates Jordan Spieth, but you might be annoyed by some of the antics and constantly chatting up his caddy, Michael Greller. And, of course, the mics are more open now than they ever used to be, so we hear a lot more of that. He's more neurotic than your typical gifted athlete. I'll put it that way. And that could be a positive for you, could be a negative for you. All I know, Zach, is it makes him interesting. And much like the rise of Bryson DeChambeau, we like interesting, don't we?
I think in the case of Jordan Spieth, the adage failure sometimes can be the best teacher really, really applies, where you crash and burn so many times, and really depending on what your mindset is as a golfer, if you don't win, you look at it as a fail. A lot of the greatest competitors in sports in general, if they lose a moment, if they lose in a plate appearance, if they lose and they bogey a hole, then they look at that as a failure. And some people are wired that way, and some people can handle it better than others. And Jordan, with the loss of his putting stroke for the longest time, really didn't have any real substantial advantage in his game. He never was really long off the tee. We've discussed his 2-way miss consistently throughout our par 4 streams. his iron play was dicey because his long game was dicey. So when you do that, you can only scramble so much. And whatever the putting inconsistencies were, they were what they were. And you have guys that can drive it past him that were much more substantial with their iron play and were more consistent on the greens. And Jordan just wasn't able to get it done. And so many times this year he was in contention and just wasn't able to finish. And the last term when he was in contention, he did it again. He went over par, but for the first time, really, it seemed like he was optimistic, where it was, okay, I like what I did. I just didn't score well. And sometimes you just have days like that where you can plod along and truck along and your game's in the right spot, but just the scores aren't coming. You're just not making putts, or you miss club, or you're mentally not in the right headspace in that given moment, and you just aren't able to turn the page quick enough. Golf is a funny game like that. And when rounds are 4 to 4.5 hours, it becomes incredibly easy to do, even especially with the best players in the world. Every small little dink becomes an advantage towards another guy or a disadvantage towards you, however you want to view it. I think the biggest thing is Jordan simplified his mental game. And I think that really was a key, where he said, look, I don't care if I win this week or if I lose this week. I still feel that my game is trending in the right direction for a major. And it's always what you hear basketball coaches say, Matt. This was a great win in December, but we want to be playing our best basketball in March, when the most important games of the year happen. For a lot of people and everybody, I mean, you heard Rory McIlroy, what was it, yesterday, say a really cool story about Tiger Woods, and the only trophies he really saw were the major trophies. And last I checked, the Masters is a major. So you're darn right you're going to care about the Masters and prioritize that over others. So, of course, Jordan won the tournament, and insert Andy North and Scott Van Pelt holding up, oh, the guy that won the week before the Masters has never won the Masters before. I feel like that was every year they would hold that up over the years. And perhaps you could look at it both ways. I think Spieth is at this point free-rolling. He feels good about the state of his game. The mistakes are still there. He's not playing his A game. But again, it goes back to the beginning of my answer. He can look at it as, oh, I'm not playing my A game. This is a major. Or I just beat the field last week, and I wasn't in the biggest of trouble like maybe I was in weeks before, and I'm not playing my A game. And here I am at a course where I have better knowledge of the course in 90 to 95% of the field, and I'm coming off a win. If you're not riding that momentum and you don't consider Spieth one of the favorites, then you're fooling yourself. Now, how that's going to translate, because obviously winner's responsibilities are something. He's been through a Texas swing where, of course, there's going to be more media attention because he's from Texas. So you have that. So how much of a psychological disadvantage is that for a guy like Jordan, who does seem to obsess over some things, maybe more than other golfers, which is something you touched on? That remains to be seen. But it is going to be interesting to see when the dust settles how he plays this week. Is he my pick to win? Spoiler alert, no, he's not.
Yeah, we can get to that in just a moment here. But again, on Spieth, I find him more likable now than I did actually when he was winning major championships and seemingly pulling these tournaments out of his backside at times. I found it a little annoying because I thought at some point he's got to fall off, right? He can't keep making these 40-foot bombs like he did at the Open Championship, in fact, memorably. That might be the last notable putt that I could recall him jarring until this past stretch here where he's been getting himself into contention, and winning takes some luck. So I don't necessarily judge golfers on wins alone, although they do help. I judge them more on their form, and Spieth's form is as good as most, if not all the golfers are going to be in the field here in Augusta. All right, it's time to get down to it, Zach. We've danced around the issue enough. Who will be your winner? I will go first, and I'm not going to say what might be an obvious guess for some of you out there who know my affinity for what Bryson DeChambeau has done. I don't think he's quite there right now. I don't think he's in terrific form. Yes, I know he won on the Florida swing. I know he outdueled Lee Westwood at Arnie's tournament and won at Bay Hill, a very difficult golf course. And it looks like Augusta's shaping up to be pretty difficult this year, firm and fast and really, really challenging from just a shot by shot value perspective. So I'm not sure he's quite on top of his game like he would want to be at this situation. And you know what? Also, Augusta may have grown its, quote, rough a little bit up. It's the first cut, I guess they call it, but neither here nor there. This isn't Winged Foot where he has a huge advantage if he hits it in the rough because he's so strong and his wedges are as long as a 6-iron, so he can get more leverage on them. Ironically, I think the way they try to take the driver out of the hands of some of these big hitters actually plays into their hands because they maintain the club head speed and the strength to get the ball out of any lie, even if they miss the fairway. But at Augusta, it's different. You have some side hill lies, you have downhill, you have uphill, and I'm just not sure he's as sharp as he would want to be concerning that right now. Of course, he's been in the winner's circle already this year, so he could prove me wrong. The guy who I think, who did also win on the Florida swing, who will be able to carry that over is Justin Thomas. And you might say, Matt, that's definitely not a spoiler or any kind of a sleeper pick here. But hey, I'm not going to overthink this one. I think Justin Thomas is the best approach player in the game right now. And I think it takes not just precision, but also smarts in approach. And I believe he's got both the ability and also the experience at this point, Zach. He's played the Masters several times now. And there's a really interesting post on a website called Data Golf that indicates that your 7th or your 8th Masters, that's right around when you peak. That's when your ability level meets your experience. And you have to have some experience there to be able to not just read the greens, but also know where to leave your misses and know how to play it smart. So I think we're reaching that nexus here, that crossing line on the chart for Justin Thomas, I should say. So I think JT takes it home and brings home his first green jacket and his first major since 2017. What say you?
As far as Masters pedigree, I'm still waiting to see that legitimate result from Justin Thomas. T17s, what are we at? T32s. He got a hole-in-one at one point. So, I mean...
Yeah, it's not great, I'll admit. Not great.
It's not great, and his form in match play was absolutely atrocious. I mean, obviously there's been some personal stuff on his mind the last few months with family loss, with sponsorship loss, with mental mindset and makeup and regrouping in that sense. So for me, every time I pick Justin Thomas, I feel like he screws himself. He misses the fairway wide right, and he just, as automatic, as rock solid as he looks in the first 12 holes, he undoes it with 2 bad ones. And really, for me, that's where I have some issues with it. For me, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be a little bit more ambiguous here. I'm not going to pick somebody. I'm going to say we're going to have a first-time major winner. I'm going to make that promise.
Okay, wow.
So I could see somebody like Patrick Cantlay, where it could be his time, where I view this more this year than other years with the way the greens are in its current state as more of a second shot golf course, maybe not necessarily as much about positioning off the tee. And Cantlay, yeah, he kind of faltered that last day in match play. He completely faltered at the Players. Of course, he had a month almost in between starts at that point, but he was probably one of the hottest golfers. He didn't win, but he had a lot of really consistent results before that. He really was very comfortable the first couple of days of match play before he, like most other people, just got tired and just lost form. For me, he's a guy that I think has a really good mental mindset where, kind of like Dustin Johnson, he doesn't really let you in much. He doesn't give you too much. He doesn't necessarily have a flashy part in his game, but he doesn't have a weak part in his game. And I think with Augusta in its current state, where rounds of 70 are going to be really good, I think that Patrick Cantlay is a guy that has the makeup where he's not going to get frustrated like a lot of these other big names are to not be getting birdies. I think you're going to see guys like Brooks Koepka, who is injured, really play themselves out with some of these lies. I think it's not going to do his leg that good. I think Rory McIlroy could be a sexy pick, but he's not really because he's undergoing a lot of changes. I think that Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau are going through the same problem right now, which is their iron play. And this is not the week really that you need to be working on your iron play. And it's ironic they say that because both are, I think, top 20 in strokes gained approach the green this year. So it's not like they've been any slouches, but both of them were really disappointed with how they were approaching their second shots in match play. And match play really exposes you where it's more mental than it is because it's a marathon. It's one guy, but it's also how many holes guaranteed. I mean, you're guaranteed to play up to 54 holes, regardless, before your week even comes to an end. So that and alone, if you miss a cut on a regular week, you're playing 36 already. Mentally, you're preparing yourself for a potential for another round, which is a lot more work, considerably physical and mental. So, of course, the way Dustin Johnson's round ended was a little bit of controversy with that whole thing with Kevin Na, which I think in some way, roundabout way, might have affected him a little bit, as much as he might not want to admit it. The fact that his game wasn't sharp and, marking your golf ball, was that a gimme? Was it not? No, I just don't know if match play is a format that really suits his game that well. I think he's just somebody that likes to not have as much parameters and wants to just go out and play. I mean, heck, he just played disc golf yesterday. I mean, that tells you kind of where he's at. I mean, last year, I think the Masters went awry for him because, just simply put, him being on a golf course just wasn't healthy for him at that point. And at least he's starting to recognize that balance, and maybe that could bode well. I mean, heck, on the Florida swing, he wins, and the next week after his win, doesn't seem like the course is going to suit him, and he nearly darn wins that thing too. So, I mean, so many times you count him out, and just when you count him out, he comes back in. So there's a lot of favorites that could do really well, but I could see a guy like Sungjae Im that could really do well. Patrick Reed, really good putter this year. He knows the greens, past champion. He could do really well. You go down the line, there's so many guys that could really do well. You mentioned Justin Thomas. He is third approaching the green in strokes. That's a possibility. Colin Morikawa doesn't really make a big miss, is really good in his second shots, and that's how he won his first major. And it very well could be the recipe for how he wins it this year. Maybe his form isn't necessarily the best, but, I mean, sometimes form schmorm. I mean, it's the Masters. So, I mean, really, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't anybody in fantastic form right now, which makes this incredibly wide open. So I'm going to be just as wide open and say, you know what? It's not going to be a big name. We're just going to get a first-time major winner. Patrick Cantlay's a big-ish name. He'd win his first major, but he hasn't broken through. So in a lot of circles, maybe he hasn't. John Rahm also in those circles might not have broken through. He needs the qualities. Although you and I definitely are no swamis here. We do not have a good track record picking majors. So anybody trying to complete their DraftKings, you might just want to make a left turn and just completely ignore anything we've just said this last little bit.
Well, you have until the first ball is struck, so still a little under 12 hours to go as we record this on a Wednesday night. Morikawa is an interesting name because of his affinity for iron play, and that's what it's all about. It's about ball striking at Augusta. You think it's about putting, but historically, it's really not. It is. You have to putt at least decently well in order to win, but you see a player like Sergio Garcia, not known for draining a whole bunch of putts, really, from any range over the course of his career, but known for striking the ball well. Patrick Reed can really get on a heater too, and we saw that when he won in 2018. And of course, the guy who's won 5 of these things, Tiger Woods, maybe the best iron player in history, the history of this game going back to the old Tom Morris in those days. So yeah, Morikawa fits into that vein, and he wouldn't be a first-time major winner, but this would be a real shot of publicity for him. He got some attention, obviously, last year for the PGA Championship win at Harding Park in San Francisco. But it was a weird situation, no crowds, limited crowds here today, but the Masters is just a little bit different, or a lot different in some cases. And he's not that long, but when the course is playing firm and fast, everyone gets rollout off the tee, so it may not be that big of a disadvantage as well. All right, Zach, I was going to talk about something personal as far as you and I were concerned, not like deeply personal, but what our golf goals were going to be for the season. You know what? I'm throwing that in the trash. We're going to go with the topic that you brought up. Maybe cliche. All the players get asked this Masters week, which is why I initially passed it over. But what would be your Champions Dinner? We had the Champions Dinner just yesterday on the grounds at Augusta National. As you mentioned, a couple of past champions unable to attend, Tiger Woods most notably due to his injuries, but at the same time, you got DJ able to host it for the first time, if you will. But the question for me is, what kind of a combination do you want? I always need a healthy heaping of protein. And if you're going to be playing golf the next day, you need some high quality carbs too. So I'll think about it from a nutritionist style or point of view here. I want a big steak. Give me a T-bone steak or a sirloin maybe. And give me a sweet potato. And then for dessert, we'll splurge a little bit with some key lime pie, which is my all-time favorite dessert. So Chef Weiss, what would you be placing out before the champions and all the VIPs at your dinner?
Well, with apologies to the stomachs of certain golfers, I did struggle with this. I gave you this topic while I was in the middle of recovering my 15-minute grace period for my second COVID shot. So I don't know
Yes.
what came over me, but with apologies to the burger, the Therminator, the Thurman Cafe burgers, which I was a close honorable mention. I went with this. For an appetizer, you're looking at pulled pork sliders with au jus sauce and horseradish cheddar cheese, with as well as an option for, of course, a vegan option. So we would go with like a vegan mac and cheese kind of an option for those that are looking for lighter fare. For dinner, we're going to be looking more along the lines of filet mignon, some Brazilian steakhouse cuts, something very simple served alongside with mashed potatoes, as well as an option for a salad or side salad for those that are in the mood for something healthier. And then for dessert, you're looking at assorted cheesecake trios with various different kinds of cheesecakes, as well as there's options there are vegan options for cheesecakes. So that would keep in mind the nutritionist aspects and golfers' diets as well. So we're looking at that. And then as far as drink is concerned, some classy traditional wine that is to be determined, that I'd flip a golf tee and determine. But I think that's a menu that hits some protein, you can pig out on, but also there are safe alternatives for those that don't necessarily want too much beef. So I think that's classy. That's not the 13-year-old Zach. That's not the 1998 or 1999 Tiger Woods meal, which is something that I would definitely splurge for as well. We're not going to get cheeseburgers. We're not going to get any of that, although I was tempted. But I think that's a safe menu. I think that checks off a lot of boxes. So I think that's a good way to go, and I think it definitely beats pigs in a blanket.
Well, I forgot a couple of things. I forgot appetizer. I just listened to a podcast, No Laying Up, with Mark O'Mara this week, talking about his Masters win in '98, and he said he served sushi the next year at the Champions Dinner. So that's a big appetizer for me, a personal favorite. So yeah, throw sushi on there for my appetizer. And then to wash it all down, how about some old-fashioned cocktails? We'll make it nice and classy, Don Draper style. Take it back to the 50s and 60s at Augusta in a good way. That's the way we'll put a cap on the evening, and that's the way we're going to put a cap on this edition of the Par 4, our first live version here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, as well as PittsburghGolfNow.com. That's where you can find all of our coverage of the local golf scene, plus this type of stuff where Zach and I go a little bit long and a little bit deep on the topics that are tingling the senses of the golf world. And as usual, everyone's feeling great because the weather's turning around. It's starting to feel like golf season. And also you see the best players, the best male pros in the world, at least, tee it up and go after it on a course that has become one of sports' most hallowed arenas worldwide. So that's the appeal for me. And let us know what the appeal is for you, both on the comments here on YouTube or right there on the website or on social media too. You can find me and Zac Weiss. Just search our names. You see our names there right at the bottom of the screen. That's what I like about this platform as well. Keep it easy, keep it simple. Zach, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed it, and enjoy the Masters.
Thank you. One last note here. We did mention the males. We don't want to uninclude any females. Congratulations to Patty Tavatanakit for winning the ANA Inspiration. Essentially a wire-to-wire effort since the second round, and very respectable. And obviously Lydia Ko gave her a heck of a run for her money on Sunday with that near-course record there. Just the round that she had on Sunday, definitely look that up. It was just cool to see those two dueling, and it was definitely me flipping the channel back and forth between the two events because I was just so captivated by the golf that those two had. I think that was the best golf we saw that weekend. So, I mean, kudos to Patty, and here's to it. And maybe you and I might need to go cover that Solheim Cup, Matt. I'll plant that seed now.
I think women's golf is getting more and more interesting by the day, getting deeper and deeper by the day, whether you're talking about the top amateurs at the Augusta National Women's Amateur last week or the top pros, like you said, were on display at the ANA Inspiration. Huge week for women's golf last week with the first major of the year, first to five, and also what has become the feel of a major tournament, at least in just its second iteration. So I started with compliments to Fred Ridley and Augusta National. I will end with that too, because of the addition of Lee Elder, the inclusion of women. I realized 10 years ago there wasn't a woman member, or close to 10 years ago at Augusta. So they're coming out of some pretty regressive policies. And I may roll my eyes at a lot of the decorum stuff, calling the fans patrons and the rough the first cut and all that stuff. But at the same time, I can appreciate an organization trying to make some progress and realizing that it has the influence to have a large ripple effect across not just the golf world, but also the sports world. So that's part of the reason why I've reconciled myself with the Masters to bring it full circle. Okay, thanks again. Like I mentioned, PittsburghGolfNow.com is the site. We're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, PGH Golf Now too. For Zac Weiss, this is Matt Gajtka saying enjoy the golf. God bless. We'll talk to you next time on the PGN